New Jersey enters this season with another stacked roster, but will injuries once again be the downfall of the Devils? This is the 2025-26 Deep Dive on the New Jersey Devils. Hello and welcome to team number 11 on my preseason power rankings. This is the New Jersey Devils, and like I said in the intro, the Devils have a strong roster again. Like, this is a team again that a lot of people look at their roster, and including myself, and think that they are a very solid team. But the question every single year now, and it's going to be until it's proven otherwise, is can this group stay healthy? You know, can you get a full season out of Jack Hughes? Can you get a full season out of Dougie Hamilton? Can you get a full season out of a lot of these players? And so far, the Devils haven't been able to do that. And it seems like every year, this team just, the end of the year, they're going to the playoffs and they're limping in because, you know, some of their biggest players are not playing, and it derails what should be a strong season for them. And it really is becoming a case where year over year it's been the same story. And for as much as I love this roster, and, you know, I had them at the top of my rankings last year going into the season, I really just think that until they can prove to me that they can put together a healthy season, there's always going to be a red flag with this team. And that's insanely unfortunate because, like I said, on paper, like, this Devils roster should be incredible. Like, they should definitely be a contending team. But unfortunately, you can't turn injuries off in real life. And that really has been the deciding factor for this team from start to finish every single season, that this core has been in place. And I really hope that they can figure that out because, like I said, like, I really like this roster. And the only they're 11th because I just don't trust them being together by the end of the season. And that's really the biggest thing that leads them to drop a little bit in my rankings going into the season, just because that's become such an automatic factor for this team that it's really just unfortunate. As we go through this roster, like, I'm going to say a lot of really good things about this team, but the caveat for pretty much every player is going to be, but can they stay healthy? And it's it's kind of crazy how, like, this really could be one of the biggest what if stories in the NHL, at least for this era, if they really don't even get to, like, a conference final with this core, right? And that's where we're at right now, because it is such a good team, and they've underperformed so many times, and it's not because of a lack of talent, it's just because of a lack of availability. You know, and as we jump into the individual position groups here, like, you're seeing, like, a really strong group, right? Like, 10th in offense, 10th in defense, 13th in goaltending, 4th in special teams, and 9th in coaching culture. Like, it really is a very well-rounded top-end team. And there isn't really a flaw in this team. Their biggest flaw was in net, and they went and got, you know, Jacob Markstrom and Jake Allen, and that's been a really strong goaltending tandem for them. But again, it's just availability, right? Like, Jacob Markstrom was, you know, somewhat inconsistent last year, and both goalies are old, so you're losing a bit of that, right? Like, just the age curves and stuff. And same with the blue line, right? Like, the blue line, if healthy, is very good, right? But it's just a question of, you know, whether or not they're actually going to be healthy, right? And same with the forward core. It's the same. It's really the same story across the board for this team, and it's insane how that's the world that we live in here. I mean, the coaching culture has been really good. I really like the group they have together there. And you know, they've created a good team. Like, I can't blame management and coaching for the lack of success here, right? It's just, in some cases, it's very much out of their control, like what's been happening. And, you know, we jump into the coaching culture here, and like, Tom Fitzgerald, I think, has done about as good of a job as he could in this situation. I would have liked, like, I still think that this team needs another top end player just to help mitigate the risk of injury. But it's harder to come by than it is to say, right? Like, even, when healthy, like, this team does have guys like Jesper Bratt, Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier should be a good enough, core three guys, but they can't stay healthy. And Sheldon Keefe, I think, gets a lot of crap as a head coach, but I think that he fits what the team wants to do. I think they had a solid season last year, and again, like, derailed by injuries. I do see the Devils being a playoff team. I think that, barring something catastrophic, this team should be a playoff team with the core that they have. And I really think that there's been, a lot of good that's been done by this management team. And I think it's just about waiting to hope that you can get a season where everything comes together. And hopefully it's this year, man, because, like, I think it's such a disservice to the NHL and to hockey fans that, a team that's been this consistently well built and put together just can't seem to have it come together at the same time. And it's such a disservice to, the situation, like the team building that's been going on. And I really hope this is the year that it all kind of comes together, because that's really the only thing that's missing on this team, like, essentially. You look at their numbers even from last year, right? And the goal scoring wasn't great. 25th in goals for, 14th in expected goals for. The defense was fine. 11th in goals against, 8th in expected goals against. Evolving Hockey had them a little bit lower than that in terms of their, defense. But the power play is fantastic. Number 3 in the league in power play, number 3 in the league in penalty kill in terms of, the actual percentages. Their expected numbers on both units were very good. Their expected goals against on the penalty kill was a little worse than their actual numbers came out to be, but the power play should be a top 3 power play again. The finishing was a big issue. Goaltending was fine. So, like, overall, like, there's enough good here. I mean, the finishing was an issue, but they also were missing Jack Hughes for a big portion of that. So it's, it is what it is. So, like, I really do believe in what the Devils are building here. I really like the pieces that they've been able to put together here. And, they finished 16th in the NHL last year in points. They were 3rd in the division. I think that, the Metro, in terms of the top 3, should be fairly stable, especially for New Jersey getting in. I do think that that's, something that you should not necessarily expect, but I don't see much cause for concern of them being, in that hunt for, division lead or a playoff spot. And it, like, there's a lot of questions about where this team is going to be in terms of health, right? Like, that's going to be the deciding factor on the season at the end of the day. And, there's still 2 teams in the Metro that I have ahead of them right now. And and it's because of the health. Like, it really is. Like, when we go through this team, like, the roster is so good, but they just can't all be on the ice together. And it's like, there's such a hard team to place and, like, how I'm ranking them because of that factor, right? Because of the looming factor that, like, we're at the point now where, like, it just has to be expected that that somebody on this team is going to miss, like, significant amount of time. And it really is a disservice to how good this team should be overall. Speaking of the offense here, I mean, it's a strong group, right? Like, even though Timo Meier really hasn't worked out as well as they probably would have hoped, and it's been, a little disappointing to see his, the lack of success that he's had in New Jersey. He started to kind of find his way last season, but I still think there's still a lot for Timo Meier to give here, and he's definitely not looking like the player he was in San Jose. And I think there was a lot of excitement around Timo Meier getting brought in, and I certainly love the deal. I still don't think they gave up a ton in order to make that work. So, like, I still think that it was a solid trade overall, but he still, I think, needs to definitely find another level with the Devils. But, you talk about the top here. I mean, Jack Hughes is somebody I'm going to talk about in a second, but, like, I absolutely love Jack Hughes. I think if he can put together a healthy 82-game season, there's a very strong case that Jack Hughes is a top 5 center in the NHL. Like, I fully believe that. Like, there's a very, very strong case that he might be higher than a top 5 center in the NHL. Nico Hischier behind him. is again like a very, very good 2C. He might be the best second line center in the NHL. Behind, if you count Leon Draisaitl as a 2C. So like their core there is fine. I mean, Dawson Mercer again, like a solid bottom of the lineup kind of third line center. Cody Glass I really like. I'll talk about Cody Glass in a bit, but I really like what he can bring for the fourth line there. And then you have guys like Jesper Bratt, who I think gets a lot of criticism for his play in New Jersey, but I don't think he's necessarily the issue. I just don't think he can be a number one guy, and when Jack Hughes is hurt, he kind of has to be, right? And that's part of the issue there. I mean, Stefan Noesen had a fantastic season last year in terms of points. Connor Brown was brought in. He can add a defensive presence there. Evgeny Dadonov, again, another guy they brought in just as a depth move here. But like, I look at this team and there really isn't a ton of flaws on it. Again, like I talked about the levels of how the offense is built, and you have your top end guys right now. Again, I think this team could benefit from another top end player, but you're hoping that that's Timo Meier, right? You're hoping that Timo Meier is the guy that can kind of, take over as that, that Robin to Jack Hughes' Batman. So we'll see if that can finally come through. Again, we saw flashes of it last year, but I just need to see him be the consistent player that he was in San Jose. But you look at the rest of the roster, right? Like you have Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt, and Timo Meier, as well as Jack Hughes being kind of your big four. And then, the depth on this team is really good. Connor Brown, Dawson Mercer, Paul Cutter's not a bad fourth liner. Cody Glass is a solid fourth liner. Evgeny Dadonov brings some scoring depth. Stefan Noesen brought some scoring depth last year. Andre Palat is, he's getting up in there in age, and that contract certainly isn't aging the way that Devils fans wanted it to, but he's still a decent secondary option. So like, the way the team is built out on paper is very, very good. It's just a matter of bringing that all together. But we start talking about Jack Hughes, man, and like, oh my God, like Jack Hughes is so special as a player. Like he is such a unique and special talent, but he just can't stay healthy, right? Like that's really all it comes down to. I mean, like his primary contributions are one of the best in the league. His shot contributions are one of the best in the league. He generates a ton of chances. He creates a ton of chances with his passing. Super elite passer. His high danger assists are really high. His one-timer assists are really high. He's one of the best cycle and forecheck players in the league. One of the best rush players in the league. It's just like his zone entries are, he's one of the best entry players in the NHL. But he just can't stay healthy. Like again, like I truly believe that if Jack Hughes can put together a full 82, like he's going to be in the MVP conversation, and he's going to be looked at as, a top 5 center in the NHL. I truly, truly believe that he can be in that conversation, but he isn't right now because he can't play a full 82. And he needs to get that playoff experience, really, because like every time the Devils make the playoffs now, it seems like he's not playing. Or if he is, he's limited because he's come back from an injury. And it really is hurting his overall stock as, one of the elite top centers in the NHL. And I like Jack Hughes is one of my favorite players in the league. So I'm definitely coming at it with a bit of bias in that sense. But like the numbers back it up. Like he is so good in so many different ways, but he just hasn't really been able to show it on a big enough stage yet that I don't think people are, fully seeing him as one of those top end players, right? I think they're seeing him more as like one of he's in like the next tier of centers, and I think that's doing a disservice to somebody whose numbers are as high end as Jack Hughes are. And like he's somebody that I think could really benefit from like a great Olympics. He could become like a folk hero, kind of like what TJ Oshie was for Team USA. And I think that would be really good for him if he could have just a stellar Olympics, and I think that he could. He's primed for it because he's not going to get the primary matchup targets, right? It's going to be like the Matthews line. So I definitely think that Jack Hughes could have a very strong Olympics for Team USA if he's healthy and is able to go. And I think that could really boost his stock overall as a top center in the NHL and just this household name kind of player. Whereas now I think he's not quite in that tier, and I think he should be, because again, like, his numbers are so elite and he's such a special player. It's just he can't stay healthy, and it's such a shame for a player of Jack Hughes' caliber. Nico Hischier is in a very similar boat. Nico Hischier has been one of the top like centers in terms of like in that secondary kind of tier. He certainly has been a top line center in New Jersey, especially without Hughes. I mean, like, he's very much stabilized the boat there. I think Nico Hischier is kind of in a situation similar to what like Alex Barkov was like 5-6 years ago, where Barkov was like heralded as like one of the best defensive centers in the league, but like his numbers really didn't back that up. He was just, winning big faceoffs and was very good in transition. And I think that was kind of what helped boost his defensive numbers, because he was just getting out of his defensive perception. Whereas now, like, Alexander Barkov's like legitimately a super elite defensive center. But I think Nico Hischier is kind of in the same boat, where he's like a very good transition player. He can create turnovers. He wins a lot of faceoffs, and the perception around him is, well, he's he must be a great defender. And because like a lot of the defensive numbers just aren't publicly available to people, which is a shame, but that's a whole other conversation. I love Nico Hischier, but his value is really in his offense right now, and it's unfortunate that that's kind of the perception around him right now, because I think it's actually doing him a disservice in the same way it did for Barkov, because Barkov's putting up insane offensive numbers at that point too, and now he's just putting up insane numbers on both ends of the ice. But I really think that the discourse around Nico Hischier being just this defensive center is very much doing him a disservice, because we're talking about somebody who's 25 years old, and is putting up some of the best offensive numbers in the league, some of the best finishing numbers in the league, especially last year as well, playing against insane competition, and he's not really getting the credit for that, because people are just talking about his defensive game, which isn't really the strength of his game at this point. It was a couple years ago. You talk about 22, 23. He was very much that defense first center, and I think that perception is still kind of stuck on him. And I definitely could see the Alexander Barkov trajectory, where he does end up just developing into an all around super high end defensive center and two-way center. And we saw his numbers go up last year, but the discourse should really be about how good Nico Hischier's offensive numbers are, and how good he is as a play driver and as a playmaker and as a creator, and as a transition center for sure. And if all those things are kind of getting brought up now, then that's going to I think add to what his overall value and perception is around the league. And again, like, probably the best thing to happen to Nico Hischier has been Jack Hughes injuries, because it's given him more of that spotlight to be like the number one center, and he's certainly shown that he can handle that, and he's done a good job so far. So I don't think that that's going to be any issue for him moving forward. And again, like, a healthy Jack Hughes makes Nico Hischier's life a heck of a lot easier, because it's a 96% competition percentage, playing against high end competition every night and still putting up great offensive numbers is just a testament to like how, if that competition number drops, his numbers on both ends of the ice should skyrocket even more than they already are. So Nico Hischier is awesome. I love him. One of the best second line centers in the NHL in quotes, because he certainly could be a first line center on quite a number of teams in the NHL right now. Jesper Bratt, again, is such a fascinating player, because I feel like Jesper Bratt kind of was the punching bag for Devils fans the last couple years. He's gotten like the Mitch Marner treatment almost, where like his numbers are, I mean, obviously he's not at that level in terms of production or quality, but I feel like he gets a lot of the crap from Devils fans, and it's a little bit unjustified, because his numbers, especially offensively, throughout the course of his seasons, are very, very high. He's a great play driver. He's a great creator. He's a very good finisher. And again, just the small sample sizes of playoffs without having your number one center with you makes things difficult for scoring wingers, right? Like, that's nothing new. That shouldn't be a shock to people. But because they can't, Jack Hughes isn't there, it's hard to, it makes Jesper Bradt's life more difficult for sure. His power play numbers are phenomenal. Defensively, there's not a ton there. As a typical scoring winger archetype, the defensive numbers are certainly lacking, and that's nothing new to anybody who understands how scoring wingers work in the NHL. But again, like as a secondary guy, if everything is coming together and you get a boost from Timo Meier, who we'll talk about in a second, Jesper Bradt's value is very, very high for what the Devils need from him. So it really is just a matter of everything coming together, because if this team, if the building blocks fit the way they should and are all available like they should, then Jesper Bradt's role would be more suited to his actual skill set, which is just being, a scoring winger and allowing, guys like Jack Hughes to kind of do everything else. And if they, again, if a full healthy season of that would be, I think you'd see a lot more love for what Jesper Bratt is, and what he can bring to this team, because he does have tremendous value. It just, the situation hasn't been ideal for him, especially like in those biggest moments at the end of the year, because of who's missing everywhere else in the lineup. Timo Meier is such a fascinating case because his numbers have been declining in the last couple of years, and I had a ton of hope for Timo Meier being the next kind of level player that the Devils needed at the time they traded for him, and kind of being that secondary option behind Jack Hughes and kind of that insurance policy, because he was able to be a very, very good producer in San Jose. And he's 28 years old, so there's still time for that to happen. And we did see some bounce back last year. His offensive creation and production in that sense did take a jump up, even though his finishing went down, and his defensive numbers took a pretty big jump up last season. So I do think that there is production, there is quality happening here with Timo Meier, and I think that the stability with the Sheldon Keefe system did help him last season, and another year under that should at least level him out. I don't see another dip happening at this point. And if Timo Meier can grow into the third or even true fourth best player on this team, then that's going to help the Devils too, right? And he was such an important piece that they brought in. He was supposed to be this all-in kind of move for a top-end winger, and he really hasn't become that yet. And for the money they're paying him at $8.8 million, you're really hoping that he can truly get back to where he was in San Jose and what people projected him to be now that he's playing with higher-end players. So Timo Meier is definitely like the X factor on this team in terms of the overall success here for the Devils, because they did invest a lot of money in him. They invested some assets into him as well, and having that all come together for them is going to be so important. Maybe not to the elite first line top end winger that maybe some people thought he was going to be originally, and I certainly thought he could at least rival, maybe not at the top tier of wingers in the NHL, not in like the Pastrnak, Kucherov, Panarin tier, but even kind of a level below that, I thought was definitely attainable for him, and he certainly hasn't reached that yet in New Jersey. But there's still, again, he's not old yet. He's still in the prime of his career. I think that another year under Sheldon Keefe with stabilizing everything out should be beneficial for what Timo Meier needs to be and what they kind of need to get out of him, because again, like, he's certainly an X factor on this team, and I think that will be a big determining factor of whether or not the Devils end up being one of these true contenders, or if they're just going to be a team kind of hovering around the playoffs and trying to fit themselves in there. Dawson Mercer, again, like another player here that adds a bunch of good secondary value to this team. Right now, his offensive numbers aren't great. They're pretty, league average, slightly above league average, especially for his role. But 23 years old, there's still a lot of time to grow there, and I really like Dawson Mercer for what he can do. His power play numbers are already very good. His defensive numbers have taken steps up year over year. And as like a secondary, middle six forward on this team, he brings a ton of value to that role, and I think he's very good in that role. Again, like, he doesn't need to be asked to be, one of the top 4 or 5 best players on the team, but if he can kind of lead a third line and be, a driving force on that as a two-way guy, that brings a ton of value to what New Jersey needs, and it does help stabilize that middle to bottom six. If you're asking Dawson Mercer to jump in and be a full-time, top six forward at this point, I'm less excited about that. I definitely think he'd have more value, like I said, leading a third line, being a driving force for an energy line. I think that is where, Mercer's value is going to be found on this team. And again, like if everything comes together, if the building blocks or the puzzle pieces are all there, the picture for what this offense could be looks really good because they do have people to fill, pretty much all those spots. And Dawson Mercer, on a third line being a, driver for that, is a very good spot for him. But it's just a matter of everybody being available, right? And if somebody isn't, then you got to move everybody up. And then you have players like that playing, slightly above where their role should be at that point. And again, there's still growth time here with Dawson Mercer. He's 23. There's still plenty of opportunity for him to continue to develop, and I think that's going to be the case. But as of right now, going to the season, the expectation should be, very good driver for that third line, and then you kind of just hope everybody else can be there and do their jobs effectively above him. Cody Glass, as I talked about, is somebody that I really like. I've been a Cody Glass fan for a while, and I think again, we talk about the high pick and and what people expected from him, as a first rounder, but like a mid first round pick, like people need to realize, like if you're getting, the years of development, what he's at almost 10 years past his draft at this point, like we're getting to there, right? 2017. So, we're a couple years away from a decade that he's been, in an NHL system, and he's still a very effective NHL player. Like, I don't think you can complain about that, right? There's plenty of players that have been picked higher than he was who are out of the NHL completely. So, yeah, Cody Glass isn't, the top six, center that some people projected coming out of the draft, but being an effective NHL player is still a very good thing to have. And, he finds himself here on another team. I think he'll be, just as useful to New Jersey as he's been to a lot of them. His retrievals and exits in the, out of the defensive zone aren't fantastic, but his ability to, stop rushes, is solid. His ability to get into, those passing lanes, clear the net, those are all things that also help the defense. So, it's not just necessarily about the retrievals and exits, but doing all those little things to, disrupt, the flow of offense for another team is something that Cody Glass is very solid at, especially, as a fourth liner. And, he does bring a bit of an offensive spark to him, in a depth role. He can be, a bit of a creator. There's nothing like insanely special about his offense, but like in terms of, creating chances, he can get into that. He's very good as, a rush center. So he can bring a bit of offensive upside to a fourth line, which is something that a lot of fourth line centers don't necessarily do. A lot of times this is just your pure shutdown defensive center. But Cody Glass does have a bit of offensive, upside there. It's not going to be anything crazy, but it does give them a bit more of a dynamic player for a fourth line, which I really like. So, I think Cody Glass is a super useful guy for a bottom six. I really like the signing when it happened. I think he does help stabilize what the bottom of this lineup looks like, and he'll be able to, improve the defensive numbers and bring a bit of that, secondary, almost tertiary offensive production, every once in a while. And, he's somebody that I could see, having a couple big goals throughout the season, that kind of come out of nowhere because of that, that spark that he can bring, on the offensive side of the puck as well. Stefan Noesen I wanted to talk about here a little bit because of just how good his season was last year. 22 goals, 41 points, and it kind of just came out of nowhere. Especially the first half of his season was exceptional. He was just putting up, it seemed like he was scoring every game. He kind of cooled off in terms of his numbers, on the back half of the season. But again, like as, the seventh, eighth most important forward on this team, getting, somebody who can score, 20 goals, I think that he'll probably be closer to 15 at this point. I don't know if he'll repeat as a 20 goal scorer, but hey, if he does, like that's upside, right? Like anything over 15, I think it's considered a very strong season for him. But again, we're talking about somebody here who's got decent two-way ability. His play driving isn't fantastic, but he really started off the season last year as an exceptional play driver somehow. It just kind of came out of nowhere, and then again, it did die off a little bit as the season wore on. But again, like if you can just pull a 20-goal scorer out of the bottom of your lineup, like it does help quite a bit. And I don't know if 22 goals is to be expected from him this season. A lot of the numbers point to that not necessarily being the case, but hey, I mean, put him into a top 6 role. If you can get value out of him in that spot, that's great. If you can't, you do have guys in the bottom 6 that can fill those holes in the top end of the lineup if you need to. So there's really no downside to Stefan Noesen. I don't know if we get the same season out of him in terms of production, but if they do, like, that's fantastic. That's absolutely incredible for the Devils. But I don't necessarily know if it should be expected. But again, like it was such a pleasant surprise, and he was such a fun player to have. He's somebody I on my fantasy team for the first little bit of the season, because he was just putting up crazy points all the time. He's shooting a ton too. He took a bunch of shots, and again, like if you can get that secondary offense from guys like Stefan Noesen, who knows? And maybe it's the Sheldon Keefe system. Maybe he does. It is repeatable in terms of what he put up production wise last season, and that would be great for the Devils, because again, those secondary options, having a 22 goal scorer fall into your lap, like a Stefan Noesen, who really, when they signed him, I don't think they expect him to be much more than a bottom 6 forward who's going to add some depth to the team. And he came out and really became a valuable piece to the team overall. Connor Brown is another player they signed here, and Connor Brown's been improving his last couple years here after really being dreadful in 23-24, and we saw all his numbers really jump up last season. And he actually became a very effective defensive fourth line kind of player, and he really went from being almost unplayable that first season in 23-24 to being this very strong defensive fourth liner who again can bring a bit of an offensive spark to him. Now, it's not anything special, but in terms of his penalty kill numbers, he's very good penalty killer. His even strength defense is really strong. It's another low event player. I think him and Cody Glass kind of add a 1-2 punch into what could be the fourth line by the end of the season. As just defensive shutdown kind of guys. Who both can bring, a slight offensive upside to their game as well. So very similar to what I said about Cody Glass. I think Connor Brown was a pretty low risk, acquisition. Now 30 years old is getting up there. So I don't know what the how long his progression will continue, but he's certainly like the jump that he had from 23-24 to 24-25 everywhere is encouraging, and you're hoping that you can continue to get that out of him. Here in New Jersey. And I think that, again, like the Devils have enough dynamic players throughout their lineup that I don't think he'll be in a situation where he just kind of gets put into a rut essentially. So I'm excited to see what Connor Brown looks like for this bottom 6. I think he could be a very, very nice acquisition to the overall success of the team. Evgeny Dadonov, again, is another guy they brought in here. There isn't a ton of things to say about what Dadonov's going to bring. He's going to be, one of those secondary offensive guys. He can still generate at a pretty decent rate. His defensive numbers aren't very good. The power play, in terms of his creation, he was actually pretty underrated last year in Dallas. There wasn't a ton of finishing there, but again, like he's going to be put on a second unit for one of the best power play units in the league. I think that there could be some upside there, but just another secondary scorer. And again, it's very much, it's not necessarily Jack Hughes insurance, but it's just insurance that, guys like maybe Stefan Noesen take a bit of a step down while you add Evgeny Dadonov, who can kind of make up for the drop off a bit in points there. Same with guys like Palat. Maybe you see a bit of drop off there again. You could still have some offensive juice kind of throughout your lineup here, and that's what Evgeny Dadonov's going to bring, and I don't mind that. I think it was a low risk move. Low risk, mediocre reward. Moves like that are good for the edge cases. I think that there's a lot worse players they could have thrown into, the bottom 6 here in New Jersey. And I think Dadonov could be, again, a guy that scores a couple big goals throughout the season and kind of surprises people. I don't think he'll be a huge liability overall. Finally, Andre Palat, who has really, really taken a drop off since signing the deal. 33 years old, $6 million for another 2 seasons is a lot of money to be paying him. He's not unplayable, but certainly is a liability in terms of his cap pay. It's definitely the worst deal that this regime has handed out. In terms of overall value, he hasn't really brought much to the team. He does bring that the Stanley Cup pedigree and the leadership in that sense, but the Andre Palat of the Tampa Bay dynasty certainly isn't here anymore. But again, like if he's playing, he's still somebody that can play a bit up and down your lineup, maybe in a smaller role. With the depth guys they brought in here, maybe we can see. His role diminish a little bit, the competition level go down, and maybe we see, a bit of a bounce back from Palat in that sense, just because of a lot easier of a workload. I think that's probably the best idea for him right now. But, thinking that he was going to be this middle of the lineup, great contributor, I think it's kind of passed him by. But again, like in certain roles, if you can kind of scheme around him and get him into favorable matchups, I think there's some value here. But I don't think you're going to get the $6 million worth of value that you paid him. I don't think they really have from the start of this contract. So it's disappointing. It's definitely like the blemish on this team, and the expectation for him compared to the reality that they got has been very disappointing. Look at this blue line, man, and again, it's a blue line that I really like. I think that this blue line is filled with talented players. You have Luke Hughes, who didn't develop as much last season as I probably would have hoped to see from him, but just the depth on this blue line is just so good. I mean, Jonathan Kovacevic is injured, so his value won't be crazy, but Jonas Siegenthaler, great defenseman, fantastic. Brendan Dillon as your sixth defenseman is phenomenal. Dougie Hamilton again, glass cannon Dougie Hamilton, elite offensive player, but just can't stay healthy. Brett Pesce, I think, is underrated in terms of what he was able to bring to this team after leaving Carolina. And Jonathan Kovacevic I really like and I want to talk about because Kovacevic's one of my guys. I criticized the Canadians last year for letting Jonathan Kovacevic go, and I got kind of flamed for it on that video. And he has a really, really productive season in New Jersey, and he got paid, obviously, for it. So, good for him. But overall, it's such a good blue line. It's just, if Dougie Hamilton's healthy for the full season, this blue line's potential just skyrockets because he's so good offensively. And this blue line really does lack, a true, offensive creator if Hamilton's missing. I mean, you're hoping Luke Hughes can come into that, but he just hasn't gotten there yet. Luke Hughes is like a number 2 or 3, hopefully. Offensively is better, but even a number 2 this year, he should be able to develop into. But not having Dougie Hamilton on this team really hurts them because the defensiveness is there. Pesce, Kovacevic, and Siegenthaler are all really strong defensively. Brandon Dillon's no slouch in terms of what he can do defensively, but it's just the offense kind of lacks if Hamilton's missing. And that overall hurts the value of this blue line, despite the fact that again on paper it looks really good. And again, we talked about Dougie Hamilton to start off here, and another strong season for him. In 24-25, and the contributions are very high. He's creating, his passing isn't fantastic, but he's somebody that off his cycle is very good, off the rush is very good. He's creating shots off high danger chances a ton. The other thing that he does really well is also his zone entry denials are actually pretty solid, especially considering who he is. But the biggest thing about Dougie Hamilton is going to be health, right? It's the same story with Jack Hughes. If healthy, Dougie Hamilton can be one of the best offensive defensemen in the league, and can be a very big contributor to the success of the Devils. But he just needs to be healthy, and there's no I can't analyze what he should do better to get there. It's just he needs to play, and if he isn't playing, the depth on the Devils blue line is good, so I'm not insanely worried about them falling off a cliff, but just the upside for the blue line really, really diminishes if Dougie Hamilton isn't healthy. And if he is, then the blue line's really set up exceptionally well, right? Especially if Luke Hughes can take another step forward, then you really have a very, very deep blue line, and they have other guys kind of in the wings that aren't necessarily on the roster there, that can also be contributors to this blue line. So it's just there's just a lot of questions about what this team is going to look like come the end of the season. And I think, what the Devils blue line looks like in March might be a lot different than what it looks like now, in terms of health. And Dougie Hamilton's clearly at the top of that list. And if he's healthy and if he's playing, at a solid level, then man, he can be extremely valuable to what New Jersey is trying to do, and it really elevates the ceiling for this blue line. Luke Hughes, again, is a player that had a decline last year. He had this really, really strong offensive season last year, and then 2 years ago, and then last year it just, everything kind of declined a little bit, right? His finishing went down, his assist totals went down, his playmaking, his ability to drive play kind of declined a little bit, and I think it was having to jump up into a bigger role was a little bit too rushed for him. He was, a bit more sheltered his first season, and I think the sudden jump up did hurt him, and there was, again, a lot of fluctuation on that blue line last season, so it wasn't necessarily something you could avoid. It was just kind of what happened. I do think that with some stability now, I think that he learned a lot from, or like there was enough learning opportunities last year that into the offseason off, the team can kind of figure out, okay, like let's try to get him back on track here. I have no doubt that Luke Hughes is going to have, a big step forward here, but there was a bit of a decline last season, and that needs to be noted, but I'm not worried about it. Like, I don't think it's the end of the world. And I certainly think that he'll bounce back very effectively and still be, super effective as an offensive defenseman. And, again, like if Hamilton's healthy, that helps him out even more because he's playing against, weaker competition. You can scheme him better. If Hamilton's out, then, it's a bit of a different story. But overall, like I'm not concerned about Luke Hughes' development. Jonas Siegenthaler, like, is just kind of the low event king that he is. He is, one of the best defensive defensemen in the NHL. Doesn't bring a ton offensively. Extremely effective on the penalty kill as well. We talked about that with a couple of these guys, where the defensive numbers 5-on-5 are really good, but sometimes the penalty kill numbers aren't. Jonas Siegenthaler is just really good at both. He's not going to bring a ton of offense, but for a team that is this, dynamic, especially offensively, and with some of the lapses in defensive ability that they have up front, which we kind of talked about, having guys like Jonas Siegenthaler who can just be, can throw out on the ice and just make sure nothing's happening behind them, does actually bring a ton of value to them. So I love Jonas Siegenthaler for what he can be. Super, super effective, very, very good in his own zone. Very smart, high IQ in terms of like cutting off lanes, disrupting offense. He does that extremely effectively, and he's somebody that they can just kind of rely on, throw over the boards. Nothing's going to happen while he's on the ice. And you have enough, creative players playing on forward that, Siegenthaler doesn't lose a ton of value because his offensive numbers aren't very good. So I think he's very good for the team. They're not paying him a ton. It's a very good fit for the Devils blue line. Brett Pesce just does not get maybe one of the most underrated defensemen in the league. The $5.5 million for another 5 years is heavy, especially as he continues to age. Like the back end of that deal might not look as good as it does now, but he's certainly like exceeding the $5.5 million value in terms of what he brings here. He's a really, really strong two-way defender. His offensive numbers took a bit of a dip last season, but they've been pretty consistent over the last 3 years. Defensively, though, he has really, really elevated his game, and especially last year. Like, I think that the Sheldon Keefe system did him wonders, and he became an exceptional defensive defenseman, even more so than the two-way defenseman that he was in Carolina. His penalty call numbers are phenomenal. Like, again, like the special teams ability here on New Jersey is exceptional on both ends of the ice. I certainly think it's in contention for one of the best units in the league. And then, it's kind of where I have them right now, is in that group. The scoring isn't there. The assists aren't even there, but the play driving himself is really good. He's a very good transition defenseman. He's very good at just getting the puck out of the zone, getting the puck into the zone. But his defensive numbers are really where he brings the most value here. And, if that can continue and he can stabilize the offense and kind of get it back to, continuing at that average level that he's been at, then, Brett Pesce as a secondary option on this blue line is so good. And again, like, he becomes even more valuable if Dougie Hamilton's healthy, right? Like it's just there's so many things there. But even as like if he has to take over as a number one guy, I'm pretty confident that he'll be able to do it like in a pinch in situations. And again, like there's enough stability behind these guys that I'm not too worried about like one of them having to be like the quote unquote number one guy on this team, just because of like how deep the Devils blue line is overall. But I love Brett Pesce, and I think he doesn't get talked about enough as being one of these better like super underrated defensemen. And $5.5 million isn't like a huge pill to swallow for how much value he brings. Even if the point totals aren't necessarily there. Finally, I want to touch on Jonathan Kovacevic because again, like he got paid pretty handsomely this season. His offensive numbers weren't fantastic. He's not a great guy in terms of like creating opportunity. He did put up a decent amount of points last season, but I think a lot of that was just due to the offense in front of him, more so than him creating it himself. But again, like very similar to Siegenthaler in terms of like being this very, very good defensive defenseman, somebody who doesn't allow a ton to happen, low event kind of guy. I don't love the contract that he got just because, again, like I talked about with Gavrikov in the Rangers video, I don't love paying defensive defensemen a ton of money just because of the lack of offensive upside there, and I think that it kind of limits what their overall value can be. But Jonathan Kovacevic's one of my guys. He's been for a while, so I'm happy to see that he got paid. And as a fan of his, it was great to see him get recognized for the value that he brings to the New Jersey Devils. Finally, the goalies, and this goalie tandem is unique in terms of like the fact that they're both very old. But Jacob Markstrom had a solid enough season last year. He really did help stabilize what this team was doing, on their blue line, and that was a big part of what this team was trying to do. And Jake Allen, again, like as a backup, is one of the stronger backups in the NHL. But again, age is might catch up to them eventually, and it's going to be interesting to see how that develops by the end. But Jacob Markstrom, strong starting caliber goaltender. Jake Allen adds a ton of stability behind that. Shout out to Josh Allen, by the way, for that comeback on Sunday Night Football. But yeah, I mean, you look at that Jacob Markstrom's numbers. Again, like I think that there's enough value here. I like the trade when they made it. I think that the cap hit is exceptionally easy to swallow. At $4 million, they're definitely getting that type of value out of him. He's not going to be like a world beater goalie, but he's certainly a good enough starter for what this team needs, and certainly with Jake Allen behind who can take some of the load off of him. I think that he's good enough for what they need, and certainly like if this team's going to try to contend for a Stanley Cup, like I think Jacob Markstrom can be the starting goalie on that team if every audience, say it with me, everybody else is healthy. And finally, we touch on the special teams here, and this is just a very, very strong unit. The first line power play is fantastic. Even the second line power play, like although their individual ratings aren't great, there's still a ton of talent there. I mean, you have guys like Dadonov, Luke Hughes, and Timo Meier on that unit, all of which can be very good offensive creators. So like I'm not super worried about that, even though their individual ratings might be lower, which kind of hurt their overall score. They still finished fourth, so like, how much did it hurt them really? And even on the penalty kill, Brett Pesce, fantastic penalty killer. Connor Brown's a fantastic penalty killer. But then you have guys like Jonas Siegenthaler, who is very good in that role. Jacob Markstrom's there. Jake Allen's there as well. Simon Nemec is listed there. He wasn't listed on my initial thing. Just, I don't know, Puckpedia was freaking out. But Simon Nemec's another guy who could step in case of injury, and could be an X factor on that blue line. So overall, like there's so much potential in this team. It's just the health. Like that's really the only thing that I have that concerns me with this roster. Like I think if everybody's healthy, the Devils should be like in cup contention. Like that's how good I think this roster can be if everybody's healthy. And they haven't been able to put that together so far, and so far it's led to an extremely, extremely disappointing overall, return for what this team's been able to put up in terms of like their actual results. So there you have it. That is team number 11 on my preseason power rankings. We are now jumping into the top 10. So we're in the home stretch. This is where the true like contenders lie. Even though like there's still a couple tiers between like the playoff teams and then the true like Stanley Cup contenders. But we're getting into the top end teams now, and these are the teams that I think could have the strongest seasons, obviously. And New Jersey is such a unique one because just of the health. But I think like in terms of their roster, like it's a very, very good team. So let me know what you think of the Devils down below. Let me know how you think they're going to do, because again, like this is a team that I think could go from anywhere between like winning the Stanley Cup this year and missing the playoffs, because just based on how the team falls by the end of the season. So let me know what you think down below. If you like this video, leave a like. It does help a ton. It helps share it with other people and let people know that they want to see more of these. Subscribe if you're new to catch the rest of the series and the other content I'm going to have throughout the season. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you for the start of the top 10.